Hello biology students, and welcome to our new unit, which is going to be our first anatomy unit, where we're going to look at the digestive system. So first, before we talk about the digestive system and digestion, I first want to kind of differentiate between some vocabulary words that students sometimes use interchangeably. So first is ingestion versus digestion. So ingestion is the act of eating, physically putting food into your mouth. Whereas digestion is when that food is then broken down into smaller molecules, which we know are monomers, that the body is able to absorb. Okay? Absorption, we're going to define as the process by which those monomers and those small molecules are taken in from the digestive tract into the bloodstream. So they're leaving the stomach, they're leaving the small intestine, they're leaving the large intestine, and they're going into the bloodstream. And then elimination is when any materials that were not brought into the bloodstream are excreted from the digestive tract. So we're looking at a picture of this illustrating here. Here I have a dolphin. Here's some food here. So the first stage is ingestion, where it's going to eat the food. Digestion, where it's going to break down that food mechanically by chewing it and chemically by using enzymes. Absorption are when some small molecules are going to leave the digestive tract of the dolphin and go into its bloodstream. And then any materials that were not absorbed are eliminated in elimination. Okay, so there are two main types of digestion that we have to be familiar with. The first is mechanical, and this is going to be literally tearing up and ripping the food. So this is chewing and breaking it into smaller pieces. And then we also have chemical digestion. This is where enzymes use hydrolysis, right, from Unit 3, to break down our food molecules from polymers into smaller, simpler substances. And then these simpler substances, that's what enters our bloodstream and are used for energy for things like cellular respiration. Okay. So now let's talk about the anatomy of the human digestive system a little bit. So the main part and tube of the digestive system is called the alimentary canal. You can kind of think of this as it's the big tube that runs from your mouth to your anus, okay? And it's made of the mouth, the pharynx, the esophagus, the stomach, the small intestine, the large intestine, the rectum, and the anus, okay? So that's kind of the main canal that runs down the center of the body, the main tube. And then the accessory organs are all the things that are not part of this long tube but are still important for digestion. So things like teeth, your tongue, your salivary glands, your liver, your gallbladder, and your pancreas. Here's a picture illustrating that. So you can see the alimentary canal is this long tube that runs from your mouth and then out through the anus, okay? You can see it's the mouth, the pharynx, the esophagus, stomach, small intestine, and large intestine. And then all these things that stick off the tube, like the liver and the gallbladder and the pancreas, those are the accessory organs, okay? So you can kind of see one long tube, that's the alimentary canal, then all these things that stick off it, those are the accessory organs. Okay. So now let's talk about how food is actually digested. So in this video, we're going to start at the mouth, and then we're going to stop at the stomach, and in the next video, we'll pick it up from the stomach and go down to the anus. Okay? So when you first ingest food, the first place it's going to go is the oral cavity. So that's your mouth. And here we're going to get mechanical digestion. So your teeth are going to be doing that mechanical digestion. They're going to cut and grind your food. And really the purpose of this is it increases the surface area of your food so there's more surface area for the enzymes to act on later. Okay? So the purpose of your tongue is to keep teeth between your chewing surfaces. Sorry, that spacing is a little weird. And it also pushes the food back to the pharynx, which is the back of your throat. Okay, that's the big fancy science word for the space in the back of your throat. Okay, so we're also going to get some chemical digestion in the oral cavity as well. So this mainly comes from saliva. So saliva is produced by the salivary glands, which are an accessory organ. And saliva has many functions. First, it moistens the food into a ball called a bolus. Okay, and saliva is made up of several things. Made up of water, mucus, salivary amylase, and lysozyme. So we'll talk about what each of these things do in a second. Okay, so first, salivary amylase is an enzyme. We know it's an enzyme because most enzymes end in ASE. And this is an enzyme that's going to break down starches, which are a polysaccharide, into maltose, which remember is a disaccharide. Okay, so it's going to start the chemical digestion of starches. And then lysozyme is an enzyme that kills any bacteria that came in your mouth with the food. So really, one thing I want to point out here is the only macromolecule actually broken down in your mouth is starch. All the rest do not get starch. So if you eat like a steak, the protein's not broken down in your mouth, just starches are. Okay. So from there, food enters the pharynx, which remember we said is the back of your throat. And the act of food entering the pharynx, it causes your esophageal sphincter to relax. So a sphincter, you can kind of think of it like a little ring that opens and closes to allow food into different parts of the digestive system. Okay? So the esophageal sphincter is a little ring that opens and closes to let food into the esophagus, the tube in your throat that carries the food to the stomach. Okay? Now, what's kind of confusing about the esophagus is there's actually a second tube right next to the esophagus called the trachea. And the trachea is your windpipe. This is what brings air to your lungs. Okay? And when you do not want food going down your trachea because then you won't be able to breathe. That's what choking is. So what we have this little flap of cartilage called the epiglottis. And it sits on top of the trachea. And when you swallow, food entering your pharynx causes the esophageal sphincter to open, so your esophagus opens so food can go down the esophagus. And it also causes this epiglottis, the little flap, to cover the trachea so the food can't go down your windpipe. Okay? If you look at a picture here, this is kind of a confusing picture. The darker part is the inside of our digestive tract here. So this is the pharynx, the back of your throat, and you can see I have two pipes. I have the windpipe that goes to the lungs and the esophagus that goes to the stomach. So when the food enters the pharynx, the back of your throat, that makes this little sphincter open up, and then this little flap right up here covers the trachea. So you can see over here the trachea is now covered so the food can't get down your windpipe, and instead the food goes down the open esophagus. And then once you've swallowed, that sphincter closes back up, and the epiglottis uncovers the trachea, so now you can breathe. Okay, so now in the esophagus, remember we defined this as just the tube made of muscle that brings the food from your larynx to your stomach. It has two types of muscle. It has circular muscle that kind of goes, muscles that wrap around in the circle around the tube, and then longitudinal muscles, nice long muscles like this. Okay, and these muscles push the food down the tube so it can go to your stomach, and they also allow it to expand to accommodate food. So this process by which we get muscle contractions moving food through our body, that's called peristalsis, and we're going to see this lots of times throughout the digestive system. It's basically smooth muscle, so muscle that's not under your control, is slowly pushing food down the digestive tract. That's peristalsis. Okay, so here's a picture of your esophagus. You can see I have these circular muscles, that's the blue, and I have these longitudinal muscles, the yellow, and if they alternatingly contract, like if the ones behind the food contract, it's going to push the food down, and the ones in the front are relaxing, allowing the food to pass through. So then finally, after the esophagus, the food's going to reach the stomach. And here we're going to get both mechanical digestion and chemical digestion, okay? So the stomach's right here. It's located in the upper left side of your abdomen. And it too has sphincters, just like the esophagus did. It has a little sphincter at the top and a little sphincter at the bottom to control what goes in and out of the stomach. Okay, so let's talk about the mechanical digestion first. So first, the stomach is literally going to churn the food. That means it's going to mix it up. Okay, and that's going to help break it down mechanically more. So just like the esophagus, it has multiple layers of smooth muscle. It has circular smooth muscles, longitudinal and diagonal. And these muscles alternatingly contract to help churn or mix up the food. And this helps with mechanical digestion. And again, I'm sorry the spacing got all wonky with this. So it should say circular, longitudinal, and diagonal muscles churn food and help mechanical digestion. There's also some chemical digestion in the stomach. So the inner lining of the stomach is basically a mucous membrane that's made of epithelial cells, so regular old skin cells, and there's little openings in this membrane called gastric pits. And these gastric pits in your stomach have glands called gastric glands that secrete gastric juice, okay, which sounds really yummy. Just kidding, I'm being sarcastic. Okay, so this gastric juice is going to contain enzymes that's going to help with chemical digestion. Okay, so gastric juice contains several things. So first of all, mucus, and that's very important because it helps to lubricate and protect the wall of the stomach. The stomach is very acidic, so this mucus helps to prevent the hydrochloric acid, which is also in gastric juice, from breaking down the stomach lining. Okay, and then it also has pepsin, which is an enzyme. Okay, and this enzyme breaks down proteins. So we said we start starch digestion or carbohydrate digestion in the mouth, and we start protein digestion in the stomach. So clearly we can't be done with digestion yet because there's a lot of other macromolecules we have not broken down yet. So I think a lot of students think digestion happens in the stomach, but really only the digestion of protein happens in the stomach. So here we can look at the stomach. So here's the stomach lining, those epithelial cells I talked about. And you can see how they have these little holes in the stomach lining, and these are the gastric pits where that gastric juice is produced. The gastric glands in the gastric pits produce gastric juice, and that contains mucus, pepsin, and hydrochloric acid to help break down proteins. Okay, so we talked about the stomach is very acidic because of that hydrochloric acid, a pH of 2, and this is a good thing because it helps to kill any bacteria that make it into your stomach, so they don't travel further in your body. But it's very important that we have the mucus there that helps protect our stomachs against that pH. If you've heard of an ulcer is literally a hole in the lining of your stomach that has been caused by either bacteria or this hydrochloric acid literally burning a hole through your stomach. So it turns out most ulcers are caused by a bacteria doing this, but the hydrochloric acid can do it as well. So it's really important that we have this mucosis, this mucus layer that helps protect us from that. Okay, so then finally, the last thing we're going to talk about in this video is the sphincters in the stomach. So remember I said there are 2 sphincters in the stomach. So this is your esophagus here, here's the stomach, and then here's the exit of the stomach. I know that's a pretty bad drawing. But there's a sphincter up here called the cardiac sphincter. It's called that because it's relatively close to your heart. Okay, so it opens and closes to let food in and out of the esophagus into the stomach. Okay. And then, so that opens to let food come in. Both sphincters are closed while the stomach churns and mixes the food. Okay? And then when the stomach is ready to release the food from the stomach, it will open the bottom sphincter. And again, I want to emphasize finally that the stomach does very little digestion. It only digests pepsin, or only just proteins using pepsin, and it does almost no absorption. It's really more of a storage tank than anything. So in the next video, video 2, we'll pick up and finish the pathway from the stomach on. But that's it for video 1, and I'll see you in video 2.